On behalf of Parya Trillium Foundation, it's my pleasure to welcome you, everybody, to today's event. We are privileged to have Honorable Minister Jim Hudson with us today, and we're going to have some speech and Q&A after that. But before we start, I want to ask Mr. Tabrizi, the president and the founder of Parya Trillium Foundation, to start the event.
Good morning. First of all, we have two records in this country, to my 40 years being in this city. First of all, day minus 31. I have been witness of minus 30, 34, but at night, but never had in the morning. That is very good. The second one, this meeting is also unique. We never had a meeting of almost 60 business developer and job creator of Iranian community to be in this meeting, and I'm very happy to have Honorable Jim Hudson to be here. Before I begin my talk, I would like to invite everyone to join me for a minute of silence in the honor of victims of the recent tragic event in Iran. Ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Jim Hudson, Minister of Energy and Natural Resources, who has been always very kind to our organization. Thank you for joining us today, and a special welcome to Minister. It is an honor to host you and a group of our community business executive, researcher, and artists. I give a quote from the late Prime Minister Parya Trillium. He says, "Immigration is essential to Canadian growth and prosperity." For more than few decades, immigration started from Iran to Canada. Iranian community have chosen Canada as their new home, seeking democracy, safety, and opportunity. Today, we are honored having more than hundreds of thousands of Iranians living across Canada. We are proud to be among the most successful, highly educated immigrant community in Canada, with a strong representation in engineering, science, healthcare, research, entrepreneurship, and arts. Across Canada, and even within this riding, our community generates billions of dollars annually and creates thousands of jobs, active in housing, manufacturing, energy technology, construction, professional service, and the art. It is a very impressive achievement considering our short history in Canada. We have become an important contributor to Canada's growth. Today we are happy because of the first time having about 60 business leaders and innovators who are building companies, generating employment, and contributing significantly to Canada's economy and wealth. We hope that today's events will strengthen collaboration between our community and the federal government, particularly in the high-tech and innovative industry. By working together, we can create more jobs, attract more investment, and further strengthen Canada's future and economy. We are proud Canadian, proud contributor, and ready to do even more in future. I would like to say thank you very much for everybody to participate in this meeting, and during the later talk, which we will have the opportunity to have the talk with the Minister directly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tabrizi. Before we start, I want to just give some few words about the Parya Trillium Foundation for those who have been here for the first time or have no information about Parya before. Parya Trillium Foundation is proud to be the first and only Canadian community center in the world. Registered federally in Canada in 2002, for years have been provided a wide range of services, cultural events, settlement and employment support, youth and senior programming, language and skills training, and community health initiatives, not only for Iranian Canadian, but for people from all backgrounds. Our center is a bridge between culture, a hub for civic engagement, and a place where newcomers and long-term residents alike find support and opportunity. Parya Trillium Foundation owns 53,000 square feet of land and 21,500 square feet of building. Now we look forward to hearing from Minister insight and to sharing our community's perspectives. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Honorable Jim Hudson.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for coming out on a cold Saturday morning when you could be doing something else. I really appreciate you taking the time. Salam, and thank you for the warm welcome. I want to begin by thanking the Parya Trillium Foundation and you, Mr. Tabrizi, for the important work that you're doing to support newcomers, to support families, and to support community, the new community members here in Markham Thornhill. This room reflects something we see across Canada. People who have come to this country for opportunity, like my parents came to this country to find opportunity, to build careers through hard work and skill, and are now giving back to the country that has given them a chance to prosper and grow. First and foremost today, I'd like to acknowledge what is happening in Iran. The Government of Canada and Canadians from coast to coast stand firmly with the Iranian people against the IRGC's brutal actions and human rights abuses. We have been consistent in holding the Iranian regime to account through sanctions, international coordination, and the designation of the IRGC as a terrorist entity under Canadian law in 2024. We remain committed to accountability for Flight PS 752 and to ensuring there is no safe haven in Canada for those responsible. Canada will always stand for freedom, human rights, and what is right in the world. Which brings me to where we find ourselves today in the world more broadly. As the Prime Minister said recently in Davos, the old global order is not coming back. What we are living through is a fundamental rupture in the way the world's trading systems work, with profound implications for this country in particular, and I know we'll talk about that in some of the Q&A. In a world like this, we must focus on what we can control as Canadians, making life more affordable and predictable at home. And that's exactly what our government is focused on doing. So first, I'd like to talk a little bit about affordability. We know families are under real pressure from the rising cost of everyday essentials. And that's why we've introduced measures like our grocery rebate to provide direct, targeted relief where it is needed most to those who can't afford today's cost of living. As many of you know, I think, are in real estate, another real pressure point is around housing affordability, particularly in the GTA. This is why we are focused on building millions of new affordable homes, so focusing on the sector that isn't being served by private sector development, the affordable homes, through our Build Canada homes, and partnering with developers to build more affordable homes in this country. I'm sure we'll talk about that in our Q&A. We're removing barriers to building, supporting modern construction, and getting homes that families can afford built. and getting them getting people back to work and building. Second, on building the economy with new infrastructure, as we say, getting Canada back into the business of building. In today's world, economic strength comes from capacity to produce, move, and sell things. That means goods and services and products. That means Canada needs to get moving on energy, on infrastructure, and major industrial projects. That's why we created the Major Projects Office. That's something I oversee as chair of the Building Canada Committee. And we are starting to deliver in a big way. We have designated more than $116 billion worth of projects and got those up and running, the closest of which is right at Darlington, where we're building the first 4 small modular reactors in the world. Canada leading in this peaceful use of nuclear power. These projects will create good jobs and generate long-term revenue, the revenue that helps pay for things that Canadians care about, like universal health care, like pharmacare for everyone who can't afford it, like $10 a day daycare for people who can't afford daycare, and for the public infrastructure we need in this country as we grow. This is how we build long-term economic strength and resilience in the face of what's going on in the world today. The third thing we're focused on is supporting workers and industries in this uncertain global economy. Tariffs and trade disruptions create real uncertainty, and our focus is on keeping people employed and protecting families' livelihoods as we work through this challenging reordering of the global economy. We've expanded EI work sharing so businesses can reduce hours instead of laying people off. We've made it easier for workers to access income support when disruptions occur. And when change lasts longer, we are investing in skills training so people can adapt and move towards lucrative, stable new opportunities. At the same time, we're helping industries adjust by diversifying where they can sell and strengthen domestic capacity. You've heard a lot about that in the last few days with the new auto strategy. You've heard a lot about that with some of the new programs we have to build new industries, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in the Q&A. And of course, we'll always stand up for Canadian workers when the global rules aren't being followed. So where we see people dumping into the Canadian economy, we will react to protect Canadian jobs. Government has a responsibility to create the right operating environment for the private sector to prosper. When we get the basics right, businesses can focus on building and families can focus on living comfortably and passing on success to the next generation of Canadians. I'd like to speak directly to the Iranian-Canadian community here today. Many of you are professionals and entrepreneurs. That's why you're here today. You understand how economic systems work, and you know that growth comes from execution, vision, and hard work. When Canada builds, we know it builds with people like you. And I'm counting on you to do your part in keeping this the greatest country in the world. So thank you very much. Merci beaucoup, and I look forward to a discussion here today. And before we do that, I would like to just offer a certificate of appreciation to you, Mr. Tabrizi.
Thank you so much, Mr. Minister. Next, I want to ask one of our serial entrepreneurs and community leaders and old friend of mine, Pavan Melati, to join us and talk about the Iranian community, Iranian-Canadian startup and investment ecosystem. Could you please give me a warm welcome to Pavan Melati?
Thank you, Minister Hodgson, friends of Parya, fellow entrepreneurs and business owners. Welcome to this gathering, which is unique. Today I want to talk about something that is very close to my heart, which is the innovation economy and the intellectual property that we create in Canada, and the role that the Iranian-Canadian community plays in this, and share with you some statistics about what we've done for the past few years and where's the shortcomings of our IP strategy in Canada. Last year, Canada spent $52 billion on R&D. We're world class at investing, but we're falling on owning it. Only 44% of the intellectual property we create in the country reaches commercialization. But the tragedy does not end here. Of the tiny 4% of the intellectual property that we commercialize in this country, more than 3% of it ends up being commercialized in foreign countries. So our share of this $52 billion is less than 1%. We are essentially a laboratory for the rest of the world. We fund the risk, we do the hard science, and then we hand the keys to our competitors. We aren't just losing money, we are losing the future of the Canadian economy, innovation economy. Sovereignty is something that we talk a lot these days about it. This is a sovereignty problem that we have. When our technical breakthroughs are commercialized offshore, we lose control over our data, our supply chain, and our energy and innovation in future. Exporting IP is exporting control. We don't need more, maybe we don't need more R&D dollars, but we need better transition from the lab to market. We need a sovereignty framework that ensures a Canadian breakthrough stays in Canada cap tables, creates Canadian jobs, and power Canadian homes. Now, the Canadian-Iranian economy community, this is where our community is making a decisive difference. We're one of the most highly educated and entrepreneurial demographics in the country, and our track record in deep tech is undeniable. The valuation of the Canadian-Iranian founded startups today is over $10 billion. These are startups that we've generated for the past 10 years, not that old. The jobs is more than 15,000 high-quality jobs has been created by startups founded by Iranian-Canadian community. The impact, we talked about rare earth material. I can give you examples. The company Cyclic Material, founded by an Iranian founder, makes a big difference in recycling the rare earth material today. Or recently, Hyperloom is another startup that creates 10% saving for data centers. It's an intellectual property created in University of Waterloo, which is commercialized and raised hundreds of millions of dollars within a few years. These are contribution of our community and the entrepreneurial spirits of our community. Now, myself being so passionate about this with my partner there, Ehsan, we've started to work on how we can help this commercialization out be in our community and outreach with creating risk capital at a very early stage of pre-seed and seed rounds, and we've been working on that for the past 5 years. And we're trying to create a community of these leaders of our startup community to have an audience with the government and talk about what would be the policies that can help generate this wealth of sovereign IP in Canada. And last but not least, the ask from the government is to have these audience to talk about these very grassroots, early stage of these startups, what it requires, what help the government can do as far as contributing in risk capital at the early stage of these companies. The other one, we have a big machine of grant and incentives in the government that for the most is a lot of these fundings are outdated and can be channeled into creating this. And finally is the large machine of the procurement that we have in Government of Canada, if a small portion of that procurement can be channeled in adopting, early adoption of the technology that we generate and IP that we generate in Canada, we can compete with the monsters of capital in the rest of the world and to commercialize this early stage IP that we generate, high quality IP that we generate in Canada, and have and get most of the outcome of this investment that we do on intellectual property in Canada. Thank you.
So next we have a Q&A from the Minister. Would you like to join me to the podium? Or so by raising hands, we're going to start from each individual. And please talk loudly to be able to hear it in the mics as well. Thank you.
Hi, Minister. My name is Bedad Barami. I'm the co-founder and CEO of EdgeCom Energy. We're a company that helps with grid optimization for large industrials, helping them use virtual power plants to basically use electricity in a more efficient manner.
Do you have a pen?
I have a couple of questions for you as it pertains to Canada's electric revolution. So when we talk about energy, obviously there's the fossil fuel side of energy, but I think the world that we're heading towards, and China is really leading on this, I like to call it the electro-tech revolution, where the new technologies and new platforms are all going to depend on how much electricity we have. And really what we're seeing now with AI and with industrial electrification, with EVs, I saw Prime Minister Carney's push towards the EV mandates and the revisions of that. I think it makes a lot of sense, but the electricity that we're going to need, that's going to be the bottleneck of how much economic growth we can have, whether it's AI, whether it's EV, whether it's industry. And I don't see really a pan-Canadian electricity plan. I know that each of the provinces has their own plan, and it is a provincial jurisdiction, I understand that. But I think the federal government could truly lead to make us an electric powerhouse in the face of countries like China. So I just want you to speak a little bit to how you're seeing that and what your comments are.
I'm smiling because we're announcing our national electricity strategy next week. So, look, I was chair of Hydro One, so this is something that I spent a lot of time looking at. What you're going to hear is for us to get to net zero is going to cost $1 trillion with a T, $1 trillion. Now that same dynamic is going on all over the world. That is both a challenge and an opportunity. And what we're doing, there's two meta things going on why we need to spend $1 trillion. If we're going to get from net to net zero, we need to go from a world, and you guys are all business people, so you can imagine the stacked bar graph. We need to go from a world where today the graph says 70% of the energy we consume comes from fossil-based fuels and 30% comes from electricity. Some of that electricity is produced to burn fossil fuels, but it's coming from electricity. To get to net zero, we need to flip that on its head. We need to get 70% of it from electricity and 30% from burning fossil fuels. That flip is going to require major new investment in generating electricity and major new investment in the transmission and distribution grids like we used to run at Hydro One for Ontario. That alone is a big challenge. But then you need to lay on top of that AI. And AI, just to put it, and I know everyone here is an electricity geek, but to to put it in perspective, we might add a few hundred megawatts a year of new generation here in Ontario. The U.S. last year, because they're kind of leading in this, added 40 gigawatts. That's, 1,000 times what we added. Okay, 40 gigawatts, primarily around the AI challenge. China added 450 gigawatts. Just so we add a few hundred megawatts, the Americans added 40 gigawatts, the Chinese added 450 gigawatts. This is the scale of what's going on today. That's a tremendous opportunity in terms of building new infrastructure. It's going to cost money. We have to think about how we pay for that. But that is what we will be addressing in our electricity strategy, how we will do that. That will create tremendous opportunities. Canada is a world leader in a number of these technologies, like SMRs. There's also tremendous opportunities for us. So if you look at countries like, so I was in India and China, and I was with the President Xi a few weeks ago in China. And I was in India last week, I guess it was. My head's still kind of spinning. President Xi looked at us and said, "You're an energy superpower. China is too. It's called coal. We can do this all with coal. We don't want to use coal. Coal's dirty. Coal pollutes. It kills people. We would love to use your LNG. It's a lot cleaner way to get there. We would love to use renewables. If the world prevents us from doing that, we will burn coal, because we are in a battle." He didn't use the word a hegemonic battle like the Prime Minister did at Davos, but that's the world we're in today. We have an opportunity to provide a cleaner source of energy so they're not burning coal in their battle. We are doing that already. We supply 30% of the American natural gas. Trump's been very clear. If he can't burn gas, he's going to burn coal. The Indians are in exactly the same place. India gets most of its power today from coal. So there is a huge opportunity for Canada. But I'll finish up on renewables. And China and India are doing some amazing things in renewables. When I was there, both in China and India, what they are doing around creating what I'll call baseload renewables through some of their cutting-edge technology, particularly around how they produce green hydrogen at prices we can't do yet. We need to bring that technology here because it will make us stronger. It will make us more resilient. It'll make us more independent of the United States. So there's a two-way opportunity here. We can talk some more about that. I'd like to just on the question of VC. It's something I also spent a lot of time with. I was one of the founders of Next 36 and the AI stream at Next 36. I've also worked very closely with Ajay Agarwal, the founder of Creative Destruction Lab. I think they've produced 10 unicorns so far. When I was working as an investment banker, I worked on Sand Hill Road in California. So it's something that's near and dear to my heart. I think about what we need to do. When Canada decided to host the Vancouver Olympics, we were the only country who had hosted an Olympics and not won a gold medal. And we said we can never let that happen. And we created the Own the Podium. We won more gold medals than any other country. in the Vancouver Olympics, and it was about building a stair step. So I think we're pretty good at the top end. I think with Next 36, CDL, some of the stuff at Waterloo, most universities now have good incubators where they've got pre-seed and seed funding. The real challenge is in the middle as these companies scale in B rounds, C round, D rounds. The expertise often is coming from US VCs, and the first thing they want is the company to move to the United States. And what we need to do, and we're starting to do with some of the professional VC firms that are starting to develop here, maybe you're going to start one of them, that would be a good thing. As we create more Canadian-based VC firms who are happy to see the firms grow here, I think what that says is we need to be way more creative as business people. Canada for the last 80 years basically said we'll focus on the Canadian market, and international expansion is going to the US because it's simple and easy and close. Given the US now wants to charge us for market access, I mean, the customer is saying, you want to sell me something, you got to pay me, which is what a tariff is. We need to think far more globally about what international means. International doesn't mean just sell to the US market. It means selling around the world to people who share our views in multilateralism and free trade. I think we can do that. I think we can do that particularly since so many of our entrepreneurs are first-generation Canadians who have connections to other countries in the world, and that's going to give us an advantage. So I'll shut up. I talked way too long.
For the last 35 years, we decided to focus on exports. So we have right now executive projects in Saudi Arabia, in Egypt, in Libya, and I have been listening to you today, and in the past, half of the things I want to say you're actually saying, so I'll be repeating. So it's nice to have you and recognize our community and spend time with us. We know how busy you are. What I want to get your vision on is that, Mr. Tabrizi can back me up, whenever we talk about export, we always complain that Canada is always falling behind. As much as you're an exporting country, the mindset is not there. Most of our companies look at export only as US. What has been happening the last year is really an opportunity that I think the government has taken a really good handle on to open up the diversity. But as an SME company to be successful, you need a coordination between the government, financial institution, and then us to come in and do the work and de-risk the projects. There is a lot of low-hanging fruits in countries that we can be the first entry points, such as Libya. I just came back from Libya last week. There was a very large energy conference. Americans were heavily present, French were present, Italians were present. There was no sign of any Canadians. And that is a place as an energy superpower. The Libyans come and say, like, we want your technology, we want your clean tech, we want your support to build renewables in our country. And I want to see how you see this beyond expanding into Saudi Arabia and Qatar and all those traditional places that is very large companies want to go in and it's easy. How do we prepare the Canadian companies to go into places that we can be the first entry points? And you have a group of people here. A few years back, I was listening to the ex-CEO of Air Canada. He was saying you have to always think, you have to always be hungry as an immigrant. And I think you have a group of people who are willing to go places as long as you help us open doors. So it'd be nice to see what your vision is.
Yeah. So, look, I think for 10 years, the previous government was kind of in the mode of going around the world and telling people how they needed to be more like us, and that if they weren't more like us, we didn't want to talk to them. That's a wonderful place to be when the world's a sunny place and your biggest neighbor next door wants to buy as much of what you can so you don't really care about anybody else in the world. That's not the world we're in today. The world we're in today is a place where our traditional ally has said we're going to change the rules of the game and we're going to charge you for access to the United States market. And we want to hobble your economy so you come on bended knee and do whatever we say. How many of you listened to the Davos speech that the Prime Minister? Every line in that speech meant something. It was it's worth listening to it and just listen to each line. What he said is he said the hegemons will use our integration with their economy as a weapon against us. They will use tariffs for leverage. They want to live in a world where the strong, they want a bilateral world, where the strong do what they may and the weak do what they must. Okay, what does that mean? What that means is the hegemons, and you can decide who they are, the hegemons don't want a multilateral world. They don't want the United Nations. They don't want the WTO. They don't want the World Bank, which through multilateralism lets Canada have a significant voice. They want a series of bilateral relationships where they are the strong who do what they may, and we are the small weak who do what we must. We cannot let that happen. Okay? What the Prime Minister said is there is an alternative. The alternative is we do not allow ourselves to be in a bilateral relationship where we sell 80% of what we make to one country who wants to be the strong in that bilateral relationship and do what it may. We need to create relationships with other countries, to your point, sir. That's why our Prime Minister has been in 12 different countries in the last 6 months, done 12 trade deals on 4 continents. We're the only country in the G7 that has a free trade agreement with every other country at this point. When he went to the UAE, he got a commitment of the UAE to invest over $70 billion in Canadian business. When he went to the UAE, when he went to Qatar, and I was with him in Qatar, the number was significantly more than $70 billion. And he went to China to reopen the second largest market in the world, which was effectively shut to Canadian companies. And I can tell you, it is night and day for a Canadian company to go to China now, and it was before the Prime Minister's efforts. He will be going to, I was in India last week, as I said. We've had a series of efforts from our government. The Prime Minister will be going there very shortly. That will open what will be the 3rd largest market in the world to Canada. So think about it. China, the 2nd largest economy in the world. India, by the end of this decade, will be the 3rd largest. They'll pass Japan. We were in a world where we had no access to the 2nd and 3rd largest markets in the world. Our Prime Minister's fixed that. I was a little off. We were in the Great Hall after just being with President Xi, and Premier Mo was standing beside me. We were actually in the men's washroom, but I won't go into that. And he looked over at me and he said, Tim, I've never seen it like this. And I said, what do you mean, Premier? He said, I've been coming here for 10 years. And for 10 years, I've been getting the cold shoulder. Like they wanted nothing to do with us. They just rolled out every face. They gave us separate meetings with the three most important politicians in China. They gave President Xi, who was scheduled to stay with us for an hour, stayed with us for 4 hours. I can tell you there was I'll give you a little off the record. We had our formal meeting with Xi where we talked about opening up, and the message was sent, you will trade with Canada, to everybody. And afterwards, we had the lunch, and President Xi started sort of doing the happy, the hey, how are your kids, blah blah blah, all that stuff. And our Prime Minister kind of brought it back to the world's changed. We need to talk about how the world's changed. And Xi kind of, how are your kids? And our Prime Minister brought it back to, we need to talk about how the world's changed. And you just saw President Xi click and go, okay, you want to go? Let's go. And for an hour and a half, they just went toe to toe, talking about how the world works, what Canada's going to do, what China's going to do. And at the end of it, she kind of pushed back from the table, like, okay, this is a guy I need to spend time with. Like, that's what our Prime Minister is doing right now. And that's why, I'll give you another anecdote, as we cut the deal on the EVs. So we have opened up to the Chinese the same number of EVs they had prior to COVID. So we're just going back to the level of EVs we had. That is 3% of our market. So as we all understand what we gave them, so we got tariffs removed on all of our farmers and all of our fish products. We gave them what they had before COVID, which is 42,000 vehicles in a market where we make 1.8 million. So 42,000 out of 1.8 million, and half of those vehicles must be less than $35,000 a vehicle. Today, you know how many cars in Canada cost less than $35,000? So we've said, if you want to take a low-end market that no one is serving today, and we have Canadians who want to buy that product, get rid of the tariffs on canola, get rid of the tariffs on our fish, get rid of the tariffs on our lobster. And by the way, if you want to keep sending those, you need to come and build factories in Canada, JVing with Canadian companies. Because we know Trump's told the Americans they're going to leave. You know what they did? It was a Thursday night. We were leaving on Friday. They picked up the phone. They had 3 CEOs fly from Shanghai that evening and meet with the Prime Minister at 10 o'clock at night. And they rolled up a number of Chinese EVs to show the Prime Minister. And he told the story. There was this one car that looked like a Range Rover. And he was like, wow, like, it's a pretty nice car. How much does this cost? And they said, what's the price limit? He said, $35,000. I said, $35,000. I think that's doing what we're supposed to be doing. I think that's about how we create wins for Canada, both if we're going to take product from them, and how we reopened. So I can tell you, before the day was over, the Chinese had put in billions of dollars worth of orders for Canadian agricultural products. That's what we need to do, and that's what the Prime Minister is doing. He is not going to get stuck in a bilateral relationship with somebody who says, I want to charge you to access my market. He's going to create alternatives, because that gives us a much better bargaining position when we come to CUSMA. And we will do everything we can to protect the free trade access. And what we're saying to the Americans is, you can't have it both ways. You can't say you want all of the stuff you want tariff-free, and you get to tariff the crap out of everything that you don't want coming into our country. That's not the way we want to trade. We need to work on that. We need to create we need to create a dynamic where the strong cannot just do what they may, and we are not in a situation where we just have to do what we must.
Despite of, I guess, Canada being the leader of kind of environmental protection for many, many years, building SMRs or hydrogen technology is good, but we know those technologies are expensive and takes time. Building a kind of industry to produce the solar modules is very easy. It needs less investment, and it's very short, has very short cycle time. Just recently we heard that Elon Musk is producing 100 gigawatt of solar panels per year just to feed the data centers. So that is a good portion of a green technology or zero emission technology, which is accessible. I mean, the technology is not expensive. Establishing factories is easy and can be done with very, I guess, low investment, relatively low investment, and creates a lot of jobs in different levels, from manufacturing to installation and all that stuff. And that could be used in Canada. I mean, we have been successful in export, but not in Canada. So what is the government policy in supporting at least that side of the kind of green technology that seems to be very practical and very useful and could be, I guess, get to fruition very, very short period of time? Thank you.
So this is a place we're doing a lot of work right now in the government. The reality is the Chinese and increasingly the Indians have worked to develop the technology to a place where their cost structures are just significantly lower than what we see in this country today. Sir, I don't know what you're able to produce. Let me share with you what we heard in China. And I know I'm geeking out on you, so just bear with me. But if the average retail price that you pay for electricity in Toronto today at normal is 12 to 15 cents a kilowatt hour. The holy grail isn't getting power through solar that is intermittent and that we get it when the sun shines. The holy grail is we get base load renewable. What we need is something that you can rely on 24/7, whether the sun is shining or not. So that means we need to pair solar or wind with some combination of grid storage, batteries, and potentially other fuels. In Canada, we're still working on and we're getting there. So the IESO in Ontario is starting to add grid storage. But this is where they are in India, where I was last week. Their system operator today is bidding out to private sector developers what they would call 18-hour-a-day firm power. In India, they do it through connecting solar with grid storage and green hydrogen. Today, that market clears at 6 cents a kilowatt hour. We're at 12 or 13, they're at 6. Their grid operator is about to put out tenders, not for 18-hour, but for 24-hour. So they started at 18 because their view was between midnight and 6 a.m., there's not a lot of power. So I'm willing to let somebody deliver me something on the assumption they can't deliver for that period. So you need less batteries. They're now saying you got to bid 24/7. So you've got to get better. You either have to add more batteries or you have to add some green hydrogen. Or I talked to developers in India, and because those tenders are going out later this year. I said, where is it going to clear? Where is the market going to clear? 3 different developers told me 6 cents. We have to figure out, we have some work to do. If we can do that, we can fundamentally change the cost structure of our electricity market here. Now, what I said to the batteries are the hard part today. I think solar, we have capabilities, you have those capabilities. We don't have the battery capabilities today. The Indians are happy to come here and JV with us. That's what we need to do. We need to bring their technology here. They have some electrolyzer technology that we don't have. We need to bring that here so that we can put that together with the solar or with the grid storage or with the 55 gigawatts of offshore wind we have in Atlantic Canada or with the pump storage that we want to build here in Ontario. And we had to drive down our electricity costs so we're competitive. Just to put it in perspective, today in New York City, it's 30 cents a kilowatt hour. We already have a 50% advantage over them in that power. That's why it's insane that they want to tariff our aluminum. I won't go down that path, but if we can get it down to 6 cents, we will fundamentally leapfrog them and make us a much better place for manufacturing than the United States. That's what we're thinking about today. That'll be part of our electricity strategy that we're rolling out in the next week or so. So thank you for your question. This is something we're thinking a lot about, and it's really important we get this right.
Really appreciate the fact that you're here. I feel privileged to be here and to really witness all of this. So my name is Ehsan Mirdamadi. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Codalio. Codalio is in AI and software development space. And for your perspective,
we can hear you.
So I'll just repeat again. So my name is Ehsan Mirdamadi. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Codalio. We're an AI company that builds software development with software with AI. So we're in software and coding space. And for your perspective, I was part of the CD of the Next 38, the AI stream. And we've done some.
Good to see you doing well.
Thank you. So we've done some great work to your point. But one of the main questions I have for us today is that we have in Canada, we've been able to invent AI at the end of the day. Smartphones, some of the best airplanes, phone systems. And at the end of the day, because of the way that we've been structuring our policies around IP or investment into R&D, we're not able to just leverage that to just get to the commercialization. We're doing all of the heavy lifting. We're bringing some of the best talent from around the world. We're generating some of the best talent around the world. We're creating some of the best technologies in the world. And yet, we're still continuing to invest $52 billion into R&D. But then there's absolutely no real agenda or strategy around investing in commercialization. It has taken us a decade to come back with a program called Catalyst to invest $750 million only into the early stage VCs. And by the way, we do have the expertise. The YC, the Y Combinator of the San Francisco, is led by a Canadian fellow. And they make a decision intentionally to just forego investment into the Canadian companies, yet good 15% of all of the companies that they have invested in over the years actually carried Canadian IP. So from your perspective, first of all, what are the safeguards that we're going to be putting in place that will not investing our tax dollars into the earliest stage R&D, we do heavy lifting, and then we gift it to the world? Second, how are we incentivizing the commercialization rather than just R&D, not only for the researchers, but also for the entrepreneurs?
First of all, congratulations on going from Next AI to having your own business. That's awesome. Look, this is a problem I've been thinking about for 20 years. We created the Next program in 2010. CDL was created shortly. Waterloo has its versions. McGill has their versions. One of the real challenges, as I was talking about, as you go from seed round to A round to B round, the VCs that are willing to back you oftentimes want you to move to the US. We need to get to a place where the founders of the companies can say, you know what, I want to stay in Canada because I can do better here than I can moving down to Silicon Valley. And I still work with a number of startups. Ada was, if you're familiar with Ada, it's Mike, I got him into Next 36. He's now a multi-billionaire from, he's done an amazing job. I mean, he's chosen to stay here and build his company here. And increasingly that is the case where the founder has leverage and says, no, I want to stay here. There's increasingly a case for that because we are now starting to see an ecosystem of startups here where you can you have more stability amongst engineers here. Like in Silicon Valley, they move for a nickel. And quite frankly, a lot of the talent, so at CDL, if I remember correctly, half the talent are foreign companies that are moving to Toronto because they want to be part of CDL. You can't get visas in the U.S. anymore. Like if they're making it harder for smart, talented, entrepreneurial immigrants to go to the United States, we need to capitalize on that. So I think we're starting to see robust ecosystems in Toronto, in Montreal, in Vancouver, in Calgary around energy tech. It's a much more nascent in Calgary, just because it's a smaller space. But we need to do that. But to do that, those entrepreneurs need to be thinking globally. I remember, my first year at Next 36, and this team came and said, we got this great idea. We're going to sell, this was 2010, we're going to sell pizza online to everyone at U of T. And I said, that's awesome. Like, let's go through the math. Like, how much money do you think you're going to make? And I said, well, we figured out we could make $100,000 a year. And I said, that's awesome. So you got $100,000 of revenue, and there's 5 of you. So what are your expenses? I don't know, half? Okay. So you got $50,000 to split between 5 of you. So you're going to make $10,000 a year. Maybe you need to change your ambition. Maybe you need to figure out how to sell pizzas to everyone in Canada. Or maybe you need to figure out how to sell pizzas to everyone in the world. And now you've got a company that's worth dropping out of school and working on. I give you that to say, I think a lot of Canadian entrepreneurs start with this notion that I'm going to just sell in Canada, and Canada is going to be my solution. We need to get entrepreneurs to say, no, we can build the company here, we can be here, but we need to sell to the world. And the world is not just the United States. Because if it's just the United States, they've been clear. The strong will do what they may, and the weak will do what they must. That doesn't work anymore. So I wish I could just give you a magic wand, but I think we need to do that. And so what the government needs to do is help you with things like Export Development Corporation, the Business Development Bank. We need the Defense Industrial Agency, which we've just set up. If there's a D&D component to it, we need to make it easier for you to bid into that, to get your starting contracts. So you can then say, hey, I'm selling to the Canadian military. Okay, I want to go sell to the Swedish military. I want to sell to the Finnish military. I want to sell to boom, 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 boom. That would be my answer.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Just a very quick one. So in one of your, events, you mentioned that you wanted to leverage the public investment fund to spur the private capital or to invest in first of a kind kind of projects. So how are we doing that?
Yeah, so I was probably referring to Darlington. So in the case of, we're building the first small modular reactors in the world. For those who are familiar with nuclear reactors, they tend to go way over budget. And so, particularly when you're doing a first of a kind, like the first one in the world, no one's ever done it before, there's a pretty good risk that you have some oopses or, gee, I didn't anticipate this. So, look, I was a private sector guy. You allocate capital. You need to get paid for the risk of an oops. When that oops could cost you billions of dollars, you're very reticent to provide the equity for that. So in the case of the SMRs, what we did was we put in, Canada Growth Fund put up $2 billion it's a $20 billion program. We funded the $2 billion of equity in the capital stack. You guys all understand? Okay. We funded the $2 billion at the bottom of the capital stack, which would absorb the oops. So the people above us in the capital stack are saying, okay, I'm not the one eating the oops. I'm willing to put money in at a more reasonable cost of capital. And what I say to people is, look, this government understands you guys are all business people. Before you commit money to anything you do, you put together a financial model. And you need a line at the top that says revenue. And if you're going to calculate an IRR, or you're going to calculate an NPV, or you're going to calculate a payback period, you need to know, if you're starting to spend money at time 0, whether your revenue line starts in year 1, or in year 3, or in year 5, or like when. And the previous government wasn't willing to give people clarity. Like, you got to apply for a permit. Well, when will I get it? When you get it. Okay, well, what do I put for year 1 revenue? I don't know, that's your problem. Well, what do I put for year 2 revenue? I don't know. That's your problem. That doesn't work. If you're going to allocate capital as business people, you need predictability around, what revenue number you plug into year 1, 2, 3. So, for example, on major, so the first of a kind risk really comes around for like big mega projects, which is what the Major Projects Office is focused on. So the Prime Minister has said, we will use the Major Projects Office to attract $500 billion of private sector money to the Canadian economy. If we can attract $500 billion of money that gets put into this economy, that will offset anything Donald Trump does to us. Like if we've got $500 billion of new projects being built in this country, that's going to provide big paying jobs until Donald's gone off to the sunset. If we're going to do that, those capital providers need to know what to put into their revenue stream. So the commitment from the Major Projects Office is if you apply for a project, we will give you clarity in 2 years. You will know in 2 years what the conditions to operate are. That's best in the world. If we can do that, we will attract the UAE will send us their $70 billion. The Qataris will send us their many multiples of the $70 billion. The Indians will send us money. Canadian institutional investors like the Maple 8 will happily put more money into Canada. And the people in this room, when you go for your permits, will put up more money because you'll have clarity around how long it takes to get that building permit or to that environmental permit. That's the goal. Like, we're business-minded. We understand what you need to allocate capital. And ultimately, we want private sector capital unleashing the economy. That's a way better source of capital than asking you guys to pay more in taxes so we can get government capital to do that.
But the question that I have is, during my time in the oil industry, we used to have a lot of Canadians with technology, drilling rigs, equipment, personnel. I want to know what is the policy of the Canadian government, knowing the situation in Iran, why there is no talk of the Canadian government having a policy towards the new Iran. And you've been radio silence about what is happening in Iran. Prime Minister doesn't say a word about what's happening in Iran. You don't have a policy. If Iran changes, what are we going to do? In 2015, I was in Iran when Boeing, Airbus, Fokker from Holland were selling airplanes to Iran. There was not a single word from Bombardier. Not a single word. You have been completely out of the Iranian market. That is a huge market which will have a huge future for the people even in this room. I may be old, so I may not see that day, but the Iranians would love to get back to Iran, help build that country. That's a huge market, and I don't know why Canadian government has been so silent about it. Thank you.
So, I think as I said in my speech, the Canadian government condemns the current government of Iran for their human rights abuses and the way they sponsor terrorism around the world. I'll go back to Prime Minister Carney's speech. We will deal with the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. We will deal with the world that is, not as we wish it to be. We all wish there was a different government in Iran. We all wish that there was an Iranian government that we could all get behind to develop a more prosperous Iran for the Iranian people. We would all love there to be a government there such that every one of you could take everything you've built in this country and leverage that to do trade with Iran for the benefit of Canada, your new home, and your former home, Iran. We all wish that was the reality. It is not the reality today. We need to engage with the world the way it is today. What our Prime Minister has done, I think, by demonstrating around reopening relationships with China, around reopening relationships with India, around re-engaging with the Middle East, where we had basically turned our back on the Qataris, the Emiratis. We said, where we get to a government where we can be pragmatic, we can have pragmatic engagement, we will. What the Prime Minister says is we will calibrate our relationships with countries. We understand the relationship we have with China or even with India, given some of the issues there, is never going to be the same like it might be with a country that has more freedoms, like, say, a Scandinavian country. But that doesn't mean we turn our back. And so what he will say is we will have calibrated relationships where, and we had these very frank discussions when I was there watching with President Xi. We have the same with the Indians, where we say, these things are not on the table. We're not willing to compromise on national security. We're not willing to compromise on political interference in our economy. If we accept that, we're not going to have this. What can we talk about? We can talk about how we have some energy that you would really like to have. We have some agricultural products you would really. We'd like to have some of your stuff. I hope we get to a place with Iran where we can start to have that dialogue. I hope we get to a regime that doesn't have to look exactly like the regime in Canada. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but where we can get to a place where we can have a constructive. We're not there today. The current regime in Iran is not one this country is prepared to have a calibrated relationship with, given what they are doing to their people today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Minister. I just want to informally ask you to promise us for another session, if we can have, not so soon with your busy schedule, but someday, maybe next month and the month after. I want to ask Mr. Tabrizi to come up and wrap up our session for today.
Thank you. Again, you have to see my face. Minister, it's really great talk, and I'm sure everybody was happy, and I'm sure that with the new opportunity you will give us to have more chance to see and talk with this potential business entrepreneur from our community. And I'm sure you will welcome, especially in your riding. Just very few points. Our friend who, Mr. Masoudi, raised a political issue. I avoid always to talk about that, but only to say that this happened, the cut relation at the time of Mr. Harper, when our Prime Minister was the President of the Canadian Bank. You remember? Just, I didn't know Mr. Carney till this recent election. Then I check and I see that At the time of Mr. Harper, when there was a disaster in the economy of U.S., many banks were bankrupted, and he became the head of the Bank of Canada, appointed by Mr. Harper. I don't know if any of you remember, nothing happened to Canadian Bank. It was because of wisdom and the knowledge and the expertise of Mr. Harper, and Mr. Carney. When this election started, let me tell you, I am by education a chemical engineer. I don't have any knowledge on IT, whatever. A little bit knowledge because of my late son, who was a computer engineer and a lawyer. By political tendency, I'm liberal. But when this recent election happened, I sent email to our friend that this election has nothing to do with the political agenda or political issues, because it is more economy. And that's why I really support Mr. Carney. And I'm very happy that he became the Prime Minister and he ran it. I had a chance to meet him, and the one issue is, because I raised to him that I have been in the trade business for many years, and I asked Mr. Prime Minister that you have to oblige Canadian Bank to be more flexible, having more capacity for trade. Unfortunately, our banks here are mortgage banks. You know better than me. But almost 40 years I was working here, but if I want to do a trade, I was using European bank, because Canadian Bank doesn't have any interest or having capacity. And I'm sure that even the Prime Minister mentioned that we have to bring more competition here, so that to promote, if we want to go to export market, financial institution has a very important role. It's not good that we have a good capacity of production or very competitive. No, if the financial and banking system are not prepared, just maybe for information of some of our friends, I live in Japan, I live in Spain, and then I moved to Canada. Japanese are the master of trade. Everywhere you go, there is a Japanese company and having the support of the banks. Without banks, we cannot export. This is something I'm sure that you know better than me, because you have been always in the financial issues. About the Canadian capacity, at the time of Mr. Chrétien, I was member of the Arab-Canada Business Council, and we visited Saudi Arabia. And I was the only one who knew that I'm in engineering of oil and gas. And many Saudi companies came and talked with me. First of all, my name, I don't need a passport. I'm a Tabrizi. Everybody knows I'm Iranian. Saudi companies came and talked to me, and I was telling them that, sorry, your oil and gas is 100% under the American engineering company. Why do you want from us? 3 of those people, about 10 people I talk. This was the message when I gave to the Mr. Axworthy. We were 43 companies, 5 of us elected to talk to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Axworthy. And I told him what I got the quote from those Saudi business people. They said, Mr. Tabrizi, we want to work with Canadian companies, because Canadian companies does business. They don't have any political agenda. This was the message I gave to Mr. Axworthy. American companies have a political agenda. We don't want it. Just imagine how many years ago? It was more than 20 years ago. And I gave this message to Mr. Axworthy. At that time, Canada has 0 business in Saudi Arabia oil and gas. But about 4 or 5 years ago, I was working with SNC-Lavalin, was the biggest engineering company in Canada. SNC has more than $2 billion job in Aramco. It started from that time. It is, Minister, it is, personally, I think Mr. Trump is a bless for us as a Canada. He wake up us. It's 40 years I'm in this country, and I was telling that we are so lazy, because it's very easy. 2 hours flight, 400, and making a deal and come back. and then $4,000 flight, 20 hours in the flight to visit your client in Africa or Middle East. Of course, it makes us lazy. Canada has a big capacity. I hope in the near future we will have more capacity to meet you, and I show you the capacity of Iranian, especially engineers who came here, and they can do a lot for our economy to produce and export from Canada. This is what we need. Canada has a big opportunity. There is another issue, I think for sure, something should be changes in our export philosophy in Canada. I personally do not agree with the international trade policy they are doing all over the world. It's very heavy loaded costs for the taxpayer, but the result is very little because they don't have expertise. And we, as a system of export, as I learned from Japan and in Spain, government supporting you to visit a client anywhere in the world. They pay you for the freight, for the flight, for the hotel, or going to different exhibition. Here we don't have this. This is the problem. We put our load only on the Office of the International Trade, which is part of our embassy. This should be, I think, very important to be changed. Another story, sir, about the IT. As I said, I don't have any knowledge about it except because my late son, he was a computer engineer and a lawyer. He was working few years in Silicon Valley. And when he came back, I arranged for him to have a meeting of one of the ministers of the province of Ontario, who was in charge of the technology development, blah. And he told me that in Silicon Valley, he was working in the law firm. Minister knows about Silicon. The company, the law firm was the biggest law firm, was about 600 lawyers in the IT. And then he said, we have always university, banks, and the developer. No government. Government has no role over there. It is all these three elements, banks, developer, and universities. They can make this thing, but we, unfortunately, having this role of the government, which I'm very sorry. Once I had a private meeting with the minister, and he was so kind and asked me that, what do you think the problem here? I said, sir, everything is very good, but the problem is, with much respect, is that everything is run by the accountant and lawyer in Canada. We don't have engineer. And he was laughing at me, yes. I asked, how many engineers do we have in our government? And I give an example that in China, 24 members of the Politburo, 10 of 24 are all engineers. Mr. Shen that he mentioned, he had the same education like me. He's a chemical engineer. That's why China can do that, because engineer has the vision. And I'm sure with this new government, we will have the chance to do this, and hopefully with the support of the federal government, our community can play more roles in the success of the creation of the job and the wealth of Canada, and hopefully one day, and I didn't want to enter on the issue of related to the political one, but those who are interested, I always give my comment on the YouTube. You can go and see, because I was the one who had the meeting with the Prime Minister after closing embassy. You can go and see what was my comment and what was the response of the Prime Minister. Thank you very much, Minister. It was great to have you here.